Hi, it's Maria. And in light of the video I made yesterday, and that was, I was feeling rather complacent and not moving forward. And I felt that Elon Musk had actually brought some things up to the forefront. And in my own mind, I thought, yes, they were things that I needed to address. And if I needed to address them, then I do believe that we all might have some of those feelings of complacency and that are really holding us back in so very many ways. And I wanted to address them today with you. And I want to take accountability for anything that I have done or anything I have been involved in that in any way affects others, other than my crusade, which I know affects anybody and nobody, because it would affect everyone if they even knew about it. But the fact that my messages on YouTube and any other venue have been so restricted that basically it's kind of like, I can talk and talk and talk and no one's going to ever hear that information. And what a shame, because we do live in the United States of America and we do have First Amendment rights. And so we are not to be silenced unjustifiably. And I wanted to say that when I discuss the fact that I've been stripped of everything, and I wanted people to understand that at this point, I'm so anesthetized to it, and I have learned so much about how that happens that I just wanted to pass along whatever bits of information can help others, really, because when we have been kind of thrown to the lions, we escape through the grace of God, through the grace of the infinite intelligence of the universe, through the Creator, through the most glorious energy imaginable. So all of those are other names for God and for the greatest energy that has been, that is, and that will ever be. And I'm not even going to think about editing this video. I'm just going to talk from my heart, and whatever comes out, comes out. And so I don't have time to be editing videos at the moment. I have so many things that are really, really important. But this is also important, and I wanted to connect with you to kind of better explain sometimes my situation when it is so vast and there are just so many twists and turns and things like that people get lost in it, and then they're like, oh, well, forget it, because it's so complicated, I don't even believe her anyway. And I'm telling you, everything I am telling you is God's truth. I wanted to tell you that things that I have lived through, I don't believe anyone believed that. I don't believe that anyone else believed that I would survive. And that might be true of others here on the planet now, because when we dare question what has been the status quo, when we dare question that, then people want to shut us up. They don't want to hear it because we're just irritants or whatever. And yet my goal in expressing and exposing things that I have lived through is to help us become aware, to help all of us become aware of the potential of what can happen, and also what is happening and how we can kind of navigate our way around it, because it is a tragic situation. And for those of you that know a little bit about my situation, I was in, I'll tell you this one. After my father died, suspiciously, and then 9 months later, my mother died. Kind of suspiciously. I mean, she was starved to death. So, and it was very clear that my sister wrote the orders, she and her physician husband, to begin the starvation of my mother, who had had a stroke and was very hungry. And so the fact that someone would actually starve their own parent when the parent was visibly starving and saying, and asking for a drop of water. And a child refused because the child wanted the fortune that was in my mother's name, because it had passed from my father to my mother, and my mother now had the trust, was the beneficiary of the trust and the will. And so in order to secure all the possessions and the money and the treasure, truly, and the real estate and everything, and the gold and this and that and whatever, she had to get rid of my mother. And she didn't even let my mother live out her life. And then steal the inheritance. But in fact, she cut off my mother's life. And then she stole it. And I think the reason why I'm in the way, as far as she's concerned, is because since she stole it, then that included the 50% that was mine. And even though she has absconded with my 50% and has given it away as this benevolent benefactress, giving people $1 million here and $1 million there, it's nauseating, actually, especially when she's stolen it and it's my money. And she would then give it to people and make investments, and it was just kind of a way of buying people, But that way she wouldn't, once that money was spent, who's going to go find it? I don't know. I think she has so many dealings with people offshore that take that money offshore. And so therefore, the feds, how are the feds ever going to get that money? Where is it? It's probably in some little banks all over the world. I do believe that it's probably 50 to 100 accounts that have secured my money in there. And how will I ever know where it is and how to get it? And I don't know. I mean, she's stolen my driver's license, or someone's stolen it, right? I don't want to accuse anyone, even though we all know. And so my driver's license, my passport, my birth certificate, I mean, what else is there, And so, so there have been so many attempts at my life, be it toxic fumes coming from the vents, be it staged automobile accidents, be it poisoning my food, poisoning the water, be it having a Greyhound bus door slam on my head and knock me unconscious. And I had a traumatic brain injury. So be it having a leased Honda and a leased Hyundai, both of which had electrical issues from tampering, and the cars were rumbling and smoking and overheating, and they wanted me to continue driving these cars, when in fact, just Hyundai, actually, I had read, had to pay out nearly $500 million to people who were injured or I guess injured. I don't know how many deaths were involved, but certainly injuries and lost wages and whatever else, and damages for their Hyundais rattling. And I know when I had mine, it was like shaking, and I was terrified. And then I turned it in because I said, this is not a safe car. And then they slapped me with a with a bill, a bill of $24,000 or $19,000. I don't know which. Oh no, here's my cat again. For those of you that watched yesterday, yes, my little cat just was the musical aspect of the of the what of the video. In any event, what else can I tell you? And restaurants and life insurance policies, and there are all kinds of things that I learned that people do when they're plotting the demise of a family member. And we know that family members generally have a certain stake in their family's fortune. And so they are the ones that would benefit from any type of medical issue or whatever. And I did find out that my sister has tried to file, or maybe she did file, but of course it's hidden because I have not been able to find that information. The guardianship papers. She wants to take control of me as if I were some invalid that didn't know anything about how to deal with my own finances, or that I was like disabled in a wheelchair and not mentally all there. And so therefore she wanted to take control of my financial affairs and anything else that I had. And so I'm just horrified. And yet, because I'm denied legal representation, because of kind of the sneaky way that she and her attorneys have progressed along this yellow brick road. But anyway, I started off as a very, very happy little Greek girl living with grandparents and my mother and father, and just being the apple of their eye and just loving them and my dogs and my I did have a cat, I guess. I hardly remember it, but I did hear that the cat's name was Fluffy. And then my great aunt would bring over her dog, and it was Collie, and they called him Hector. And she had, I think, 3 or 4 different Hectors. After one would pass, she'd get another Hector. But anyway, and I had a wonderful education. And even, well, I'll digress a minute. I think I was 3 or 4 years old, and there were some neighboring boys, and they were like little bullies, and they didn't really want to play with me or have anything to do with me. And so one day, though, they did show up at the door, and I was all excited because I thought, oh, they want to play with me. And they were like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something like that. And so I answered the door, and right away, the ringleader, he just said, "We hate Greeks." And then he punched me in the nose, and my nose broke. And I just thought, you are just so ridiculous. And I didn't even know that there was anything other than Greeks at that point, because my first language was Greek, and I lived in a home where my grandfather was a doctor, but he studied in Greece and then came here. My father was a doctor, and he studied in Greece and came here. My grandmother was a dentist, and she studied in Greece and came here. And all my relatives, basically of that generation, lived in Greece, were born and raised there, and then came over to America. And so, I had a beautiful, beautiful childhood, and junior high and high school, and I always had so many friends, and I was a very, very good student, and most of my classes were filled with boys because I was very good in math and science, and so it was generally the boys that were taking the same classes that I was taking. And I guess yesterday I I paused during the filming of yesterday's video, and I think I was just struck by the thought that how and why have I gotten to where I am today at this very moment? And because I was in the upper 1% or whatever, my ex-husband was a Wall Street investment banker. I met him my very first day at Northwestern, and 7 years later, we married. And actually, my father really wanted that to happen because this boy was my father's broker, and my dad was great at making money and had wealth from his family. Hi, it's Maria. I had to stop that and start again, so thank you for being so patient. I was talking about my marriage, and it was, I thought it was okay. Of course, we were never living in the same state. I was either studying at Northwestern in Illinois, and then I went to Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana University, and so he was at University of Chicago, and so we kind of crossed paths. But he would every weekend go and visit my parents. So he was actually kind of, kind of trying to sneak in there a little bit, just suck up to your girlfriend's parents, and then once they approve, then you're a shoo-in. Well, anyway, I didn't know at the time, and he didn't inform me until the honeymoon, until I graduated with my master's, and then we got married within like a month of that. And I didn't realize, but he was gay. I didn't know, and I was just I was such a nerd. I was really a good student and focused on my education and my projects and my electron microscope, and I was working on cadavers. I was dissecting cadavers. I was teaching nurses anatomy. I was having a lot of fun there. And so I never imagined that I would marry someone who I knew so little about, even though I had known him for 7 years, and he and my parents were like great friends. And of course, he was my father's broker. But I did want to say that, so anyway, it didn't start off on the right foot. And then I said, well, we're going to get an annulment. And he said, no, we're not going to get an annulment because people are so much nicer to men who are widowed as opposed to men who are divorced. and I had to swallow twice, going, oh my God, what is this idiot telling me? Or maybe he's too sly for me, because I just couldn't even imagine that. But in any event, we married, and then he started poisoning me, and I was getting sick and sicker and sicker. And they thought at the Mayo Clinic that I was coming down with MS. But thank God it wasn't MS, but it was a poisoning. And apparently when that wasn't working fast enough, and I did find some environmental allergists who were helping me through it, he then decided that he would hire landscapers who were spraying the trees and bushes of the adjacent home, the next door neighbor's house. And he would pay them to douse me with a pesticide. I don't know if it was Roundup or if it was some other stuff or whatever, but no one would ever tell me. And so he did. And then I became the woman in the bubble because I was allergic to everything. I was like a universal reactor. And so and some doctors didn't think I was going to make it. So I really have overcome amazing odds. If it wasn't an ex-husband who was trying to get rid of me, he wasn't an ex-husband then. He was a husband then. And but we had kind of just a business relationship. But then I realized that he was involved in white-collar crimes, and that I couldn't tolerate. And so in 3 times he did that, and each time he promised he would never do it again. But of course, words meant nothing to him, and promises, he didn't keep promises. He didn't care. And so then I filed for divorce, and then he said, if you leave me, I'm gonna fix you. And so he ended up hiring the largest and the most powerful law firm in the country to come after me. And their MO is to paint every woman, or not every woman, but many women, as nuts and sluts. And especially, they were saying to him, well, if that's what your wife looks like, oh, we've got it made because she looks like, she would, I don't know, cheat on you or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, she looks like, if I were maybe 300 pounds or something, they wouldn't really care. But this way, they figured, oh, this was the easy way of getting to someone who looks like I look, whatever that is. It's just that, you have to kind of, if you are presentable, then that's how they describe you. And then they win, because then other people gang up and they go, oh yeah, well, what do you expect, right? And so anyway, and it was ridiculous, because it was like an insider group. And so there were his attorneys, and then there were my attorneys, and then there were the children's attorneys, and then there were all the experts, and the real estate experts, and the antique experts, and the blah, 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 and the psychiatrist, and then the psychological testing psychologist or technician. I'm not sure what her status was. And then there was the opposing counsel's psychiatrist, and it just went on and on and on. And in fact, then there was a mediator, and actually I used to call her Dr. Run, because she would tell me, run, Maria, run, because she said, he is so crazy that he may have a psychotic break and then come and just destroy everything in a matter of, minutes. And so she said, you're not safe here with him. And so that was really scary. And actually one night I was sleeping in my daughter's room in her king-size bed with her, because he had taken over the whole master area. And so as we were in bed, he came through her bathroom, which was adjacent to her bedroom, and he was flushing the toilets, and he was turning on and off the lights, and he was making noise and everything. And I realized, I said, what? Oh, I know, I was still asleep, really, and I could just hear this. And I thought, I'm just going to ignore it, because he just wants to irritate me. And so I opened my eyes, and he had a pillow that was just a few inches above my head. And I didn't know what he was going to do with it, but I knew that he certainly, wasn't of sound mind at all. And so anyway, and you know what? Because Dr. Ron, that's not her name though, but because she was so adamant that I was the healthy one and that he was just, a basket case and highly dangerous, they made her leave. And so she had to move out of state. I guess, if you're an insider in that group, then you're fine. If you dare to speak the truth, then you're not welcome. So she had to go. And I just had that guilt for so long, thinking, oh my gosh, I affected her career negatively, because she came out with the truth at a great risk to her own career. Anyway, and so I ended up going to the FBI, and especially when someone had tried to break in my home. I was leasing a condo in Lake Forest, Illinois. We had lived in Kenilworth, and that was where the main house was, and so he lived there. And then I moved kind of around just so I could be closer to the children, in areas where I could still afford it, because I wasn't given any money. I wasn't given child support. He was given child support, because in Illinois, or at least in Chicago, or at least what I was told goes on, is that when there's a divorce, and the woman, whoever gets 49%, doesn't get any child support. But if you get 51%, then you do get the child support. And so the judge, who was kind of a family friend of his, and his godfather, and I think he said he knew her uncle. Anyway, so they decided that he was going to get all the money. And so, but I had to afford a 5-bedroom home because I had 4 children. And so they wouldn't allow my children to come and stay with me unless I had enough room in order to keep them in the manner in which they had become accustomed, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. But that is, they said, well, if you can't afford to take care of 4 children in a way that they deserve to be taken care of, then you don't get to see them. And I thought that was just crazy. And there were just so many other instances where my life was in danger, for sure. So I went to the FBI, and they were very kind, and they said it was a very public divorce, and so they knew all about it. And they said, you know what, it might be a good idea for you to leave Chicago because it's not very hospitable to women. And there's just too many people involved in this negotiation. And so I thought, wow. So, and there was surveillance all over. And then, so they said, why don't you think about leaving? So that night, I packed up a suitcase and then went to see my daughter, who was oh, it's raining. Well, I live in Florida. Of course it's raining. But, and so I went to see her basketball practice, and then I told her, beautiful Melissa, your mommy has to go and see your grandparents, and I will call you and we'll make arrangements on how we're going to get together. And so it was just the most painful time of my life to leave my children. But it was either risk my safety and theirs, actually, because as someone tried to break and enter into my home, these huge wooden doors, and it was on my daughter's birthday. It was on her 15th birthday, and she awakened, as I did, to pounding on the door. I don't think that this burglar knew that I had recently put in a lock that wasn't going to be opened by a key. And so anyway, that's what happened. So I left, and I went to Dallas because I had a skincare company there. It was called Laser Garden. And I've since heard that my sister took it over. I don't know why she took it over, because it was my company, and but I wasn't allowed to use it. I wasn't allowed to sell anything from it. I wasn't allowed to really have anything, because my sister had really connected herself with my ex-husband and his group, and so therefore I was the odd woman out, and which is what happens, in custody situations or in any type of legal issues. There is a winner and then there's a loser, and generally the more the winner wins, the more losses for the other side, which is really tragic because there's no justice. And so anyway, the FBI. Well, I don't like to say what they told me, but after leaving there, I realized that I needed to speak up, because silence kills, and this was all truth. And this was for women. There were several women I know that lived on the North Shore who had met untimely deaths, shall we say. And so I needed to write a letter, and no one was going to stop me. And my attorneys didn't want me to do it. They said, I'm taking a risk. And I said, but I'm taking a risk if I don't. And that risk for me is greater because I am letting my children down. I can't just sit back and allow them to be part of a situation where I fear my life. I mean, I couldn't do that. And so we were stalked, and we knew we were stalked. And but that break-in was really the straw that broke the camel's back. And after going to Dallas for a little, and there was a car with tinted windows parked right outside. So by the time I landed, that car was there. So somebody had called them, and I don't know if it was a private investigator or it was somebody that was a dark person that was waiting for me. But in any event, I left on Monday morning on the first flight to Tampa, and I went to see my parents because I couldn't stay in Dallas if I was going to be followed, if I was going to be surveyed like that. And because I hadn't even slept that whole weekend. I was just looking out the window watching this guy in this big black car with black windows. So I ended up living in Florida. And my father, I knocked on my father's door, and my father was so excited to see me, and so was my mother. And they said, "Oh, well, don't ever go back to Chicago. Stay with us here." And my father was like, "I'll buy you any condo you want on Clearwater Beach. And so we'll go looking, and you can pick one that you wanted." And I knew that I was going there for my parents. And so I said, "Oh, I want one in this building." And there just happened to be a unit on the other side of the elevator bank on the fourth floor. And it was on the market. And that's where my parents were. It was on the fourth floor. And I thought, oh, this is great because I can even go in my pajamas. I can go visit my parents and have coffee with them in the mornings and stuff. And so it really worked out well. And so my father was so generous because everything that my ex-husband decided to steal or take or go through court, and he just kept suing my father. He kept suing me, and finally the attorney said, he's never going to stop until he takes everything from her. He does not want her to leave, and so that's what happened. And so what they tried to do was financially strangulate me and to shut off all my my revenues for income. And so my father ended up, he was paying for me, and for my son, he was at SMU, and so his father wasn't paying for his education, and I had to take out a loan, and my father, a student loan, and my father was paying for Peter's schooling, and it was just, it was just the way it was. But I knew so many women who had gone through similar situations, not to the extent of my situation, because I lost everything. Because once I left that morning after that pillow was above my head, above my face, at my parents' condo, they actually had a condo in Wilmette as well, because they wanted to be with the children in the summers when it was too hot in Florida and the children were out of school in Illinois. And so it was all about financial strangulation and taking everything I had. And so, and my father got an attorney, and the attorney said, "Oh, your son-in-law really is up case," because a lot of men will say, "Oh, I'm going to take everything from her." And they said, "But in this case, he means it." And they said, "We haven't seen anybody as rabid as him in a long time, if ever." And so I thought, oh, just my luck. But anyway, so I left with nothing, and my father had to help me. And I was just horrified at that behavior from an ex-husband, It just, and a gay ex-husband at that. I mean, there was just no way that marriage was going to survive. And so he should be glad, because during the divorce, my attorneys found a bunch of residences where he, I guess, had taken his boyfriends, and maybe he had rented them or something. I don't know. But there was a lot of information that they found regarding his behavior, and so he should just be glad that he was on his own and he could do anything he wanted as long as he wasn't bothering me. But anyway, let's see. And so I told you about the Greyhound bus, that the bus driver, my sister had negotiated with the bus driver. This is what I hear, and this is what an attorney wrote in the complaint, that the bus driver was paid to slam the door on my face while I was boarding the bus, because as I was standing outside ready to board the bus driver kind of came in and took cuts, and then he went up the stairs on the bus, and then he slammed the button for the door to come slamming down, and it was like really quick, and then it threw me, because I'm about 110 pounds at 5'9", and so he threw me, the bus door threw me, and I hit the left side of my body onto the bus, and then I collapsed. And then all I remember hearing is call an ambulance, call an ambulance. And then they were trying to pick me up, and I'm like, no, don't pick me up. I don't know what's going on. And so anyway, I kind of slept my way until we reached Sacramento, because I was going from Phoenix, Arizona, where I had been living with a family, to Medford, Oregon, where I wanted to study with a spiritual teacher who is very well known and who has written, I don't know, 30, 50 books. I don't know how many. But anyway, I was really excited about going to meet him. However, right around that time was the COVID. And so I ended up meeting somebody, and he allowed me to stay there, and I just had silence and darkness, and I had to heal on my own. But that was kind of divinely guided, I think, because so far I have made a remarkable recovery, and I just know that I did write a book, actually, and it was kind of channeled. It just kind of came through me. It would just come through me, and I'd be typing and everything, and so I was really excited about that. And I called it, and it's copywritten, and I'm in the process of looking for a publisher, but it's called The Game of Life on Our Beloved Little Planet Earth. And I thought, oh, that just really just came right through me, and all the work and all the pages and anyway, it was really good. So see, there are, even when you're hunted and you're the target of some crazy family, and things seem like they're just so out of control, and I had lost my homes, I had lost my cars, I had lost my clothes, I had lost my baby pictures, I had lost all of my children's things, I had lost, wedding gifts, and I had lost other gifts, and I had lost everything. And I was a really health fanatic. So, I would juice every day, and I would prepare different mixtures and different this and that, and tinctures, and I, would make flower essences I had a friend who was a holistic psychiatrist, and she and I used to pal around together. She loved the opera, and so I would invite her to sit in our opera box, and she was so excited about that. And so we had a lot of fun. It was a good life. And then all of a sudden, the divorce just brought out the cruelest aspects of humanity, really. And it became this like a bloodbath. And I thought, my gosh, more than half of all marriages end in divorce. And I remember walking through the halls of the courthouse, the Daly Center, and you would see the couple, and you would see them with their respective attorneys, and some of them would be yelling and some of them would be crying, and I, it just, my heart just sank, and I thought, this doesn't need to be. And yet I lived so much of that, and that I saw it. And and when my ex-husband was suing my father, and then I had gotten married actually for a year, just a year. He was a wonderful Canadian. I love Canadians, but he couldn't take the surveillance that was going on, and all the things that we saw my ex-husband's attorneys were doing to us. He just really couldn't take it. And in fact, there was a front page cover story, and it had my picture on it, and they put his picture on it, and it said, "She must pay." The $9.7 million judgment that they got against me, which was totally bogus. And that $9.7 million happened to be the same amount that my father had in one of his accounts. So they were just showing me that this was just all a fake thing, but that they were going to get my father's money. And so anyway, so when my husband of a year saw his face plastered on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times, he was pretty spooked, and so was his Canadian family. And so anyway, I bought him a car, and I said, you know what, here, take this, go back to Toronto, and you don't have to deal with the craziness that seems to be surrounding my life. And I didn't want him to suffer. And then since then, there were just two other people that I had brief relationships with, and both of them had breakdowns. Yeah, it was just like, oh my gosh. So not only did I have to care for myself, and I had to be the strong one, but I had to watch people I loved just not be able to handle the situation. And I thought, oh my gosh. And the more I saw, the more obvious it was to me. And I thought, this is crazy. This is what is going on throughout our country. And this isn't Afghanistan, and this isn't, some far out country somewhere, in the bush, but this is happening in America. And we need to put a stop to it, because I don't think people understand. I think what happens is people are just so upset and just so in shock that this is actually going on, that they don't know what to do. I remember some of my friends that lived in my community of 800 little homes, and their husbands were all very, very successful. If they dared to get a divorce, they all lost their children. I just feel that I was divinely guided to see what was going on there, and to have written the letter. And I don't care if it was $9.7 million that they decided that I owed, because I wrote the letter. Everything I wrote in the letter was the absolute truth. And the fact that he kept saying that he was going to lose his job or something, and he wouldn't even be able to afford gym shoes for the children. Well, the complaint was that he would it was for future earnings. He claimed that because I wrote the letter, he was not able to get a job and keep that job. And so, but that was really ridiculous, because what he did say is he wasn't invited to enough Christmas parties, and he felt that was my fault. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just have to say that when people read something and it says $9.7 million, so you would think, and in defamation And you would think, my gosh, what in the world did she say? But the fact is that the letter that I wrote, they didn't even allow it in evidence. And so all they did was they just said, oh, well, I don't think that he's going to be able to earn enough money this next year. But what happened was that his company was purchased by Rudolph Giuliani's company. And I think it's called Giuliani Capital Markets, maybe, or something like that. And so they bought him out, and for a fortune. So he had plenty of money, and he certainly didn't need my parents' money, but he wanted that. And then he teamed up with my sister, which I had no idea, but people have told me that. And I think she actually admitted it as well. And so, when they go around and they take your home, because they did, after my father died, and then my mother died, and I told you she was starved to death by my sister. After that happened, and let's see, let me get my train of thought. So after that happened, I ended up going to Brazil to pray. And I was there, I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks. And yet then I received an email from my sister's attorney saying that don't bother to come back to Florida because you don't own anything. You don't get anything from the will or the trust because your name's been crossed off or whited out or something, and that it's all going to your sister. I thought, oh my God, she's getting my home, and she's getting my furniture, and she's getting my clothes, and she's getting everything of mine. All the things that my father had bought me, all the things that I ended up with from the divorce, all the things that I ended up buying since the divorce, everything I had. And in fact, one room was filled with certified court transcripts because I had just done an amazing job of finding so many instances of perjury and forgery and everything. And so it was just like a joke. So I think part of the reason why they probably wanted to take control of my home was so that they could take all of that evidence and then burn it or keep it or do something with it. But they didn't want me to have it because they knew if I had it, I would have passed it around. And so anyway, so they don't like me. That's, I think, the bottom line. And they want to make life as miserable as possible for me. And my sister's part of that group too. And so they took my home, and they took my cars, and they took my clothes, and they took everything. And so I ended up being a street person, and I didn't know what to do because I had $10,000 worth of cash hidden in my condo, and I did have accounts, and I had investment accounts, but they drained everything. Everything was gone. And so basically what they did is they left me to die. They put me out and with no home, nothing, no money, no food, no nothing. And I'll tell you that one of the two men that I had seen during my 10 years living in Florida, outside of my Canadian husband, but he was gone by, I think, the trial was 2007, and so as soon as he saw his picture on the front page of the newspaper, the poor guy couldn't get to Toronto fast enough. But then the two other people, one I had met, I guess it was 2008, and he was my dog's physician. And then the other one was actually my twin soul that I met in Brazil. But yeah, we're not exactly on very good terms right now. And I I think it's a very difficult time right now for a lot of people, but that's just the way it is. And so, what else can I tell you now? I thank you for being so patient, and hopefully you haven't turned off. But because I really want you to know that I my story sounds so ridiculous, and it is. However, um, it was such a gift to have seen what was going on, because as I saw what was going on, I thought, this is horrible. We can't do this. How can this go on? No, this needs to stop. And I remember when I finally was of age and I had Social Security benefits, they wouldn't give me the survivor benefits when my ex-husband died. And so they said, well, we can't find his his death certificate. So if we can't find it, then you don't get the money. So what I did find out is I think it's being funneled elsewhere. So there are just so many dirty tricks that they play, you know. And so, yeah, I've been basically in financial destitution or in destitution due to horrific finances, or due to the theft of all my financial accounts and things like that. And the thing is everything I had, they wanted. And so one time I went to, when I came back from Brazil, I stopped by the bank and I emptied my safety deposit box. And my safety deposit box had jewelry that was mine. And so I put it in a suitcase, you know, like the ones that the flight attendants roll, the smaller rollers, rolled pieces of luggage. And so I put all the jewels in there, and I would take it with me everywhere I went. And so finally, when I was living in California, my twin and I moved to California after we came back from Brazil and had nowhere to live, right? And so we were there, and then when we were running out of money, I bought him a car too. And then he took the car, and I said, just go. And he had a stepmother in Spokane, Washington. And so anyway, I said, there's no reason why you have to endure this hardship like I do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that I wouldn't want you to end up resenting me for putting you through this. And I said, I just need to pray and try to figure out what is going on and why is this happening. And so I ended up after I couldn't afford rent or food or anything, I ended up going to a homeless shelter, and I asked them if I could stay there because I had nowhere to go, and no one was calling me back, and I had lost everything except I had what was in this case, and it was really a fortune. And so I thought, I can't go into a homeless shelter with jewels. And so what I did is the last day in my apartment, in the studio apartment I had, maybe it was the last day or maybe it was the second to the last day. Anyway, I ended up waking up at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I ended up walking around and taking handfuls of gold and handfuls of jewels and things like that, and walking to a bridge and throwing it in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, because I knew that I was never going to be given it. I was never going to be allowed to wear any of that, any of those priceless pieces that were mine. And so I thought, I'll be damned if I'm going to hand it over to my sister and say, here are my beautiful crosses and my beautiful earrings and my beautiful rings and my beautiful bracelets. And I had quite the collection. It just, all things so beautiful. And I had a lot of antique pieces and things like that. But I just couldn't tolerate watching her wear my things. So I thought, if because they're mine. But they would just go in there and lie, just like they lied about the 9.7 million and they lied about everything else. So, and my homes and my furniture and my cars and just everything, they just lied. And so I thought, if they can go into court with a fake will and a fake trust that's been rewritten and forged, and there's perjury all over it. And I thought, if my sister and her attorney could go before a judge and say, here, judge, we need you to sign off on this. And he did that when the thing was a total fake and he knew it, because there was the real one. And so I thought, oh my gosh, so there's no justice at all. So not only was there no justice in the divorce proceedings in Chicago, where my children were ripped from me because I couldn't afford what they demanded, what the judge demanded. And she was just, basically, she was just a token there. She was taking up space, but she and her rulings were all in favor of my ex. And so it was all fixed ahead of time. And so yeah, that's probably why some people don't like me, because I have to tell the truth. And what I saw was so nauseating and so corrupt and so horrible that I had to speak it, because otherwise they would have killed me anyway. And so, to shut me up. And I thought, I remember my attorneys said, well, there's Joan of Arc. and then I thought, no, I think Joan of Arc had a horse, but I didn't even have a horse. I didn't have a car. I didn't even have a bicycle, because they took everything from me. And so I thought, oh my gosh, that is just too weird. And then what happens is they end up, what they do is they isolate you, and they shun you. They have you shunned so that anybody you meet all of a sudden just acts like they don't want to know you or whatever. Or they pay people to not talk to you so that you just feel like you're less than, right? Or they just want you to be miserable, and they want you to be alone. So I could see how if I was walking, my neighbor actually in that California rental studio apartment, she had a dog. And so I'd offered to walk her dog for her, because she was a waitress and she was gone at night. So I used to walk the dog. And so I'd meet lots of different people and everything. And you know what? I could tell they were all setups. And so that's the thing. They want you to engage with someone who is on their side and who kind of will tell them all of your, whatever you tell them, and want you to sacrifice yourself, I guess. I don't know. And so that was that. So you become isolated because you don't want to have any part in something where people aren't telling the truth. And the one thing that I learned more than anything else, I guess, was that I have to tell the truth. I can't. I just can't. I've always been a horrible actress. If somebody wants me to lie, I just can't do it. I mean, it's just, my face turns all red. I just can't do it. And so because I wouldn't want anyone to lie to me. And so why would I lie to someone else? That's just wrong. I just don't think I can't do it. And I won't do it. I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity for anyone or anything, And so, what else can I tell you? Yeah, and you know what? It really is like, it's a group. And so I don't know how these people get to be where they are. But I mean, I've met doctors that will change HIPAA files. I mean, change the files, the medical files, per HIPAA violations. And so, and attorneys, of course, well, you know, we all saw Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar. Well, and, you know, when I was in law school, I had no idea that lawyers were like that. I do remember, it's kind of like ridiculous, but there was the moot court, what do you call it? Well, anyway, what it was is there's a courtroom, and so you argue, and then the winner, it's kind of like winning law review or something like that. Anyway, so I happened to win the moot court proceedings, and so they were all excited, and it was at night, you know, after class and stuff like that, and then it was in the evening anyway, and so they all said, "Oh my gosh, Maria won moot court," and so everybody was like, "Yay, yay, yay!" So then the next morning I go to law school, and they had a guy's name there, and I'm like, "Oh, I thought I won," and they were like, "No, actually, we looked at the file, and I guess you didn't stop in time. Your argument went over like 5 seconds or 10 seconds." Oh, and that was just ridiculous. I didn't believe that at all. But so, you know, things aren't always what they seem in every venue, you know? So it's not just isolated in the legal profession or the medical profession or whatever other, the sports or anything like that. It's just human nature. And that's a really pitiful. It's just not the way human beings should treat one another. We need to respect one another, and we need to take accountability for anything we do that is not in the highest good for all. And so, so what I have lived has been an enormous gift. And so I pray that I am able to use that experience to help others. Because what good is an experience if no one benefits from it? We're all damaged in some way by other circumstances. And so what we have to do is turn those lessons into beautiful teachings so that we can move forward in love and in light. And I don't want to sound like some woo-woo person, but truly, the people that are lying and thieving and strategizing and injuring people and lying about people and everything else, these are people that are in the dark. And these are people that are playing with a lot of dark energy. And that's a very dangerous situation as far as I'm concerned. And so I have the divine in my heart every moment of every day. And I pray that I always do what is in the highest good. And because otherwise, what are we doing here? We are in this earth plane, and there's so much animosity, and there's so much cheating, and so much thieving, and just so much ugliness. And that just is not the way that we want to live. It's not the way we want to raise our children. It's not the way we want to see the world. And so the world is beautiful. And when you think of, I use this sometimes in my other videos because to me it evokes such warmth. And that is that there is no ugly puppy. There is no ugly kitty. There is no ugly baby. And really, there is no ugly woman or there is no ugly man. And so it's just that the behaviors are so heinous that we just can't stand it anymore. And so so we have to get to the root of the problem, which is, why are people acting that way? It's it's family dysfunction, it's the way they were raised, or it's just lack of a conscience, lack of consciousness, for sure. So you've got the collective unconscious. And so how can we make the world a better place? I think that's where we need to focus our attention and our energy, instead of wasting it on as Elon Musk says, scrolling and things like that. And by the way, I just found his some of his videos about a week ago, I think, and I just found them to be amazing. And so for any of you who might want to look him up, and he really produces such a plethora of videos. They're on so many different topics, and they're really interesting. And he's quite well spoken. And so anyway, it's good. You'll really enjoy it. And so anyway, on that note, I'm going to tell you that I love you, and I really appreciate you listening to what I have to say. And I hope that there's something that I said that will allow you to understand your situation even more so than you do now. And hopefully we can make some inroads as to how we can make this world a better place. Okay? So thank you for listening, and I love you. Good night.